you friends ready to finish up Catwings? I bet you are, and I know that you are going to love the ending. It is wonderful.
Okay, boys and girls, before we get started, I want you to take a moment and remember what has happened in the story so far. Remember, in the beginning of the story, we were introduced to our four main characters, Harriet, Thelma, Roger, and James, who are all cats with wings. And their mom, Mrs. Jane Tabby, told them to fly away from home so they could be somewhere nice and safe. Well, they flew away from home, and then they landed in the woods. And they found a little home there staying in a tree, but there was an owl who was worried about the safety of her owling. So remember, she attacked James, oh my goodness, and ruined his wing. And then the owl stood watch outside of the flying cat's home. And he made sure that they knew that they were not allowed to fly. And then as we were leaving off the story, Harriet had just come back from a field where she had seen two human beings, and they had left her some food. Harriet had told us, I'll be back there tomorrow, right? So this is tomorrow. Let's find out if Harriet goes back.
Okay. Chapter, I wonder if anyone remembers. Chapter 4. Wow. Look how many pages we read in this book. That's pretty crazy. It's pretty amazing is what it is. The next day, when Harriet went to the big stump at the edge of the cow pasture, flying low and cautiously, she found a tin pie plate of meat scraps and kibbled cat food waiting for her. The girl from Overhill Farm was also waiting for her, sitting about 20 feet away from the stump and holding very still. If you saw a cat with wings over by some food that you put out, would you stay very still too? I bet I would, because I wouldn't want the kitty to fly away. Oh, and holding very still. Susan Brown was her name, and she was 8 years old. So she was like a second grader. Wow, that's so cool. She watched Harriet fly out of the woods and hover like a fat hummingbird over the stump. Then settle down, fold her wings neatly, and eat. Susan Brown held her breath, and her eyes grew round. What would you look like if your eyes grew round? That means they get really, really big. If I saw a flying cat, my eyes would get really round too, really fast. The next day, when Harriet and Roger flew cautiously out of the woods and hovered over the stump, Susan was sitting about 15 feet away, and beside her sat her 12-year-old brother, Hank. He had not believed a word she said about flying cats. Would you believe your brother or sister if they said they saw flying cats? Now his eyes were perfectly round, because he's pretty amazed too. And he was holding his breath. Harriet and Roger settled down to eat. You didn't say there were two of them, Hank whispered to his sister. Harriet and Roger sat on the stump licking their whiskers clean. You didn't say there were two of them, Roger whispered to his sister. I didn't know, both the sisters whispered back. There was only one yesterday, but they look nice, don't they? The next day, Hank and Susan put out 2 pie tins of cat dinner on the stump, and then went 10 steps away, sat down in the grass, and waited. They are some very patient kids, aren't they? So very patient. Harriet flew boldly from the woods and alighted on the stump. Roger followed her. Then, "Oh, look!" Susan whispered. Came Thelma. flying very slowly with a disapproving expression on her face. What would a disapproving expression mean? It means she is saying to her sister, I do not approve of this. This is not okay to be going around these human beings. Oh, look, Susan whispered. And James, flying low and lame, flapped over to the stump, landed on it, and began to eat. He ate and ate and ate. He even growled once at Thelma, who moved to the other pie tin because her brother was trying to eat hers. The two children watched the four-winged cats. Harriet, quite full, washed her face and watched the children. Thelma finished a last tasty kibble, washed her left front paw, and gazed at the children. So right now they're all just looking at the children. Suddenly, she flew up from the stump and straight at them. They ducked as she went over. She flew right round both their heads and then back to the stump. Testing, she said to Harriet, James, and Roger. If she does it again, don't catch her, Hank said to Susan. It'd scare her off. You think I'm silly? Susan said. They sat still. The cats sat still. Cows ate grass nearby, and the sun shone. Kitty, Susan said in a soft, high voice. Kitty, cat, kitty cat, kitty wings, cat wings. Harriet jumped off the stump into the air, performed a cartwheel, and flew loop-the-loop over to Susan. She landed on Susan's shoulder and sat there, holding on tight and purring in Susan's ear. So what just happened, friends? The cat Harriet, who was the first one to find the food, she flew right over and she landed right on Susan's shoulder. Oh my goodness, I don't know about you, but if I was Susan, I would be so excited. How would you feel if you were Susan? Would you be so excited too? I wonder what Susan's going to do. I will never, ever catch you or cage you or do anything you don't want me to do, Susan said to Harriet. I promise. Hank, you promise too, said Harriet. I promise, and will never, ever tell anybody else, Hank said, rather fiercely. Ever. Because you know how people are. If people saw them. I promise, Susan said. She and Hank shook hands, promising. Roger flew gracefully over and landed on Hank's shoulder. Said Roger. They could live in the old barn house, Susan said. Nobody ever goes there but us. There's that dovecote up there in the loft with all the holes in the wall where the doves flew in and out. We can take hay up there and make them a place to sleep, Hank said. Said Roger. Very softly and gently, Hank raised his hand and stroked Roger right between his wings. If you had Roger on your shoulder, how would you stroke him right in between his wings? How would you give him a good scratch? Pretend you are right now. Said James, watching. He jumped off the stump and came trotting over to the children. He sat down near Susan's shoes. Very softly and gently, Susan reached down and scratched James under the chin and behind the ears. Oh, my kitty loves when I do that. James said, and drooled a little on Susan's shoe. Oh, well, said Thelma, having cleaned up the last of the cold roast beef. She arose in the air, flew over with great dignity. That means like great respect and pride and probably having some pretty good manners. So with great dignity, sat right down in Hank's lap, folded her wings, and said, "Oh, Hank," Susan whispered, "their wings are furry." "Oh, James," Harriet whispered, "their hands are kind." Oh, I just love the ending of that book. What do you think Harriet meant when she said that the little boy and little girl's hands, Hank and Susan's hands, are kind? What do you think she means when she says that? Their hands are kind. And I also want to know, what did you think about the whole book? I mean, this is a big book that we read together. Did you like it? Are there certain parts that you liked more? Did you not like it? Are there certain parts that you liked less? Let me know what you think. You are avid readers, so are there any parts that made you go, or made you go, or made you go, like really happy? Tell me about what you felt and what you thought about this book. I'd love to hear all about it. Thanks, guys. Bye.